This is the LG L9 4G lens replacement, and as you'll see here, I actually have the Metro version of this phone that needs to be replaced and the T-Mobile lens because that's what I got when I ordered the part. So it looks like these should be interchangeable. So what I wanted to do is just take this down, plug it in, make sure everything works properly and that they are compatible. They look like the same phone for most practical purposes. Down here at the bottom of the phone, you'll actually have a tab where you can remove the rear panel. And you'll see there's just a tab you can kind of pry that open with. And inside, of course, we're going to start by removing our battery, our SIM card, and if you have one, a micro SD, make sure you go ahead and take that out. And then we have a whole bunch of screws on the back side here. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not a screw. Let's try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 screws total on the back panel. And we'll go ahead and take those out real quick. And one of the nice things about LGs is that the panels tend to come off really easily. In fact, sometimes it seems like it's only the screws that hold them on there. So you shouldn't have to pry too hard. In fact, this one almost started coming apart as soon as I took the screws out of it. You can see it had some kind of protective adhesive stuff on the outside there. That's what I was peeling away just a second ago. And what you can do is just take your pry tool, and if you go along the sides, it looked like that was probably the easiest place to get in here and just get this back panel popped off. Right about there. So just work up a little bit at a time. You shouldn't have to go too deep or pry too hard. This comes off real easy. And then once we remove that, the first thing I wanted to do here is just disconnect the digitizer and then plug in our replacement part and make sure that it is in fact going to be compatible before we go any further. Of course, when we're switching this over from a Metro or non-branded lens to a T-Mobile lens, it is definitely going to void the warranty on the phone, and it's going to be pretty obvious that it's been repaired before. But of course, the broken lens is not covered under warranty, so it really doesn't matter too much. So we'll go ahead and hit the power button here for a second until we see the LCD light up. And as soon as this wakes up, we'll go ahead and test the screen and make sure that it is responding properly. And so you can see I'm just kind of guessing where the unlock is, and I kind of hit it by accident, got lucky on that one. And now I need to hit the back button, which is also a little tricky. Just got to keep in mind where these are proportionately speaking. But once we get to the main screen, if I can back out there, we can kind of see that this is moving properly. So it looks like it is pretty much the same digitizer, just different branding on the outside. So we'll go ahead and turn the phone off and disconnect the new digitizer for now, and then we can go ahead and proceed to remove the logic board. So on the back here, you're going to have a series of flex cables and an antenna connector right up here. This one was a little tough to disconnect, so be careful. You will have to apply a little bit of force. Sometimes a flathead screwdriver works best. Just make sure you're not smashing any components underneath, and there's not a lot there that you can really damage. Just be careful where you're at. And then we wanted to make sure that the volume buttons and the power button are not actually glued to the frame. I believe that on this GSM version, these may actually be stuck on the frame. There's our headset jack, flex cable, and then let's see, it looks like over here we've got our main camera and a couple more flexes. I believe that's the LCD I'm disconnecting right now. And then again here for the power button, we want to just go in there and make sure that that cable is not stuck to the frame. Again, on the CDMA version it's not, but you want to be real careful because if you start prying the board out and you tear those, then it's going to be one more thing that you have to replace. And we've got a couple more cables here to disconnect. And these are all pop connectors for the most part on this phone. And once we do that, you'll notice that the earpiece speaker actually has some adhesive underneath it that's holding it into this little black piece. And I'm not sure if we could just take the whole black piece out of this part. We might be able to. But what I did is I went ahead and heated it up, and I'm just going to pry the glue away from this so you can kind of see what that component is exactly. So be careful, you don't want to puncture anything. I'm just using a flat-headed screwdriver and very carefully trying to kind of lift up on it more than I'm pushing in. And again, be careful, those wires that connect the earpiece to the logic board are pretty thin. They can be soldered back on, but if you damage them in the wrong spot, you're going to have a real tough time with that. So go ahead and pry that away from that little plastic module that's underneath it. And as we remove the board, you'll see that right above that camera, which would be to the left now it's above, there's a little black piece inside there. And we've also got this little rubber gasket that routes the sound in for the speakerphone mic. So we're going to go ahead and take that out so we'll have a little bit more room to feed the flex cable through. And we'll set that aside for now. And then you'll see down here at the bottom we have 2 additional screws that kind of hold the charging port in place. So I'm going to go ahead and take those out for now. And that will release a little black clip that goes over the charging port. My assumption is to reinforce it so that it can't wiggle around and break off the contacts on the inside, which is always a good idea. And initially I tried to pry the glass off of this by itself, but what you can actually do is pry the entire front half of the phone, including the LCD. And this is where you want to be really careful. If you put any pressure on that LCD at all, you're almost definitely going to shatter it, damage it, crack it or something. So you really have to be very, very careful at this point. And I'm just kind of pulling that front assembly away from the mid frame. And you can see it's not too tough to get this unsnapped. The only catch is here at the top, we're going to have to go ahead and feed the cable through. And what I'm going to suggest you do is just kind of leave the LCD up against the mid frame and try to keep it as dust free as possible. We will have to go ahead and remove the black panel here. You'll see in just a second. I'm just popping the seam here, but I would recommend before you go to this point, just go ahead and pull this little black piece out that the earpiece was attached to. You can see you can actually pull this whole thing away from the mid frame, but again, it's attached with the 2 cables that feed through. So in order to have enough room, you want to go in here and heat this up a little bit. Looks like there's probably some glue underneath it, definitely some adhesive underneath the camera. And that one you're going to have to pull. That's the little black piece I'm talking about there, so hold on to that. And just to demonstrate it for the most part, I'll show you how you can remove the camera. And then you've also got a couple flex cables. And if you're replacing the LCD, you'll have to take those out. But for our purposes here, all we need to do, and you can see that kind of peels up and very thin again, so you want to be careful with that. You have to remove all that foil tape that goes over it. But all we need to do is go ahead and remove the digitizer. So you can kind of skip this part unless you're actually removing the LCD itself. So what we want to do is just feed that top flex cable out through the frame. And the rest of this we can just leave on the inside for now. There's nothing holding that LCD on the frame. So be careful with this. Kind of try to put it in a dust-free area if you can. You'll see that our proximity sensor, whatever you want to call this piece, kind of fell out, the part that separates the light. So make sure you don't lose that piece. It will probably fall out while you're working on it. Next thing we have to do is remove the glass from the frame. And this is also a tricky part. They use some pretty heavy-duty adhesive on this. So be careful. You don't want to cut anything down here at the bottom like the home button little rubber pieces that hang off the edge of it. You'll have to use some heat and be very patient. This did take a while for me to get this off without doing too much damage to the frame. But once we've got it all cleaned up, we can go ahead and put some new adhesive on. And these little white stickers, make sure you salvage those. Those are going to be used to diffuse the light for the buttons on the front. So what I'm going to do is there's one sticky side to these when they come out. And what you'll have to do is take your replacement part, or at least this is the easiest way that I found to do it to get them in the proper position, is you want to go ahead and stick them to the replacement part using that existing adhesive if you can. If you have to add a little bit, that's okay. I'd prefer not to do that. And as you can see, this is kind of awkward because I can't really fold this up from the bottom. So I'm going to have to go ahead and open up this plastic, which I usually like to leave this on here until we're actually ready to install, but I'm not going to be able to do that this time, so we'll have to probably go over it with the dust cloth and make sure it's nice and clean before we put it together. And just stick those right over the soft keys, the back button and the menu button. Try to center them as well as you possibly can, and you can take a look at the mid frame if you need a guide as to where they need to be positioned. And now we've got our frame with our new adhesive. I'm going to go ahead and peel this stuff off. We'll just skip forward here once we get all our adhesive exposed and we're ready to proceed with the installation. What we're going to do now is peel this off. And this thing wraps around the front and the back. It's really kind of goofy, but just route your flex cable underneath so that everything goes on the front. And you might want to use a piece of Scotch tape or something to hold your home button in position. I actually, on the next step, actually, we don't have to put it in just yet. Just go ahead and make sure that that sits down properly. And now we're going to put it back on the frame. So this is the fun part. And again, you want to make sure this is nice and clean. But good news is if you have to, you can take it back off to clean it up again. Getting this home button to center was a little awkward because you don't want to turn the mid-frame assembly upside down. If you do, your LCD is going to slip out. And if you put the button into the lens, then it's going to fall out and when you go to put it on. So it's just kind of an awkward maneuver here. Again, if you want to add a little bit of tape on the side there just to hold it in place, you can do that. I kind of fumbled with this a little bit, but finally got everything lined up properly, as you'll see here shortly. But it did take me a little longer than I expected. We got a little bubble on the outside there. That's just some kind of blemish we can clean off later. And don't forget, you do want to put this little piece in so it separates the light for your proximity sensor. So make sure you don't lose this piece. If you do misplace it, your screen is not going to black out when you make a call. So this is very important for the functionality of the phone. And here we go. So we're going to set the home button in the bottom, feed the cable through the top, and this is where it got a little bit tricky. You'll see I had to work with it a little bit, but finally got everything situated there properly. Okay, so now I'm just real quick going to stick that black piece of plastic back in for the earpiece and our main camera. And then we can go ahead and install this little rubber piece that goes over the microphone for the speakerphone at the top of the logic board here. So I just kind of wanted to show you guys the position of this thing. You want the hole to be facing the top, obviously, because it's going to route the sound in from the top of the phone. So this is where it sits on the back side of the logic board. If you just flip it over, you can stick it right up in the same place that we took it out during the disassembly. And now you want to make sure all your flex cables are folded back and out of the way. You don't want to pinch anything when you put this back in. So be very careful. Make sure your antenna wire and all flex cables do not end up underneath the logic board. And you can see I'm going to have to kind of pull one out here from the bottom. It's a little tricky getting those all to go over the top. But once we've got it in place, the rest is pretty much downhill from here. Just plug everything in. And then, of course, we need to reposition our keys on the side, and make sure you route this antenna cable down through that little channel and plug it in, which is always fun. Although this is a larger connector for this antenna cable, a little easier than working with iPhones or Galaxies. And then we want to check these keys and make sure they are clicking back. When you push on them, make sure they spring back. And of course, we want to put the cover back on the charging port at the bottom. And then we can go ahead and snap the frame back on. We've got 10 screws to put back in. Just go work your way around, make sure everything snaps down flat. And there you have it. Metro on the inside, T-Mobile on the outside. Not that it really matters since they are the same company. We'll dust this off a little bit and we are good to go. If you found the video helpful, hit the like button, share it with your friends, subscribe to my channel, and follow me on Twitter or Facebook. Post your questions in the comment section below or visit gocellphonerepair.com/forum. Thanks for watching.